12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the governor's March 23rd, 2020 revised order prohibiting assemblage of more than 25 people. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. In-person attendance by members of the public is prohibited, but all effort will be made to permit public attendance of this meeting via remote access by internet, telephone, and via public broadcast of the meeting by Malden Access Cable Television on public access television channels. Public access will also be provided by posting draft minutes and/or a transcript recording or record of the meeting on the City of Malden website at cityofmalden.org as soon as practicable after the meeting. This evening's agenda consists of the approval of the minutes, public comment, superintendent's report, subcommittee reports and discussions, motions and resolutions, personal privilege, executive session, and then we will move adjournment. Our next meeting will take place on Monday, November 9th. And as always, we will begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for our veterans. And then we will have our clerk call the roll, and then we'll get into this evening's agenda. So if there are no questions of the members, why don't we all rise and salute our flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of all those who have fought for our country and continue to do so today. Thank you. We will now have our clerk call the roll.
Mayor Christensen,
Here.
Mr. Drummy, Mr. Fryer,
John, you're muted.
He's here.
Mr. Gray,
Here.
Mr. Iovino,
Here.
Ms. Luong, here, Mr. McCarthy,
Here.
Ms. Spadafora,
Here.
Mr. Weldai,
Here.
Superintendent Honorary.
Here.
All right, everybody. So we have a quorum sufficient to meet this evening. Now we will get into this evening's agenda. Let's take a look at the minutes from September 14th, 2020. Any motions on the regular session minutes first? Mr. Iovino moves, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Now, any questions on those minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes of September 14, 2020 are adopted unanimously. Now the executive session minutes of September 14, 2020.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Spadafora, seconded by Ms. Luong. Any questions on those?
No.
All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Those carry unanimously as well. We're now on to public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to address the school committee. We only ask that you state your name and address for the record, and please keep your remarks to just a couple of minutes, please. With that being said, Adam Weldai will administer public comment. Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so if you would like to participate in public comment, please just signify you would like to do so by either raising your hand or typing your name and address for the record into the Q&A box. And just a point of information, Madam Clerk, can you see the Q&A box?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay, just wanted to, because the addresses are there, so I want to make sure you see them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so our first public comment participant will be Deb Biswaldo.
Good evening, Mayor Christensen and members of the Malden School Committee. I hope that you and your loved ones all remain well. My name's Deb Gesualdo. I live at 34 Abington Road in Danvers, and I'm president of the Malden Education Association. Today, on World Teachers Day, I want to take a moment to recognize the labor of love that our educators in Malden put in and day out, above and beyond the hours required of them for our students and our community in Malden. They've led with passion and determination in the face of a global pandemic. Learning how to use new types of technology, new programs, new apps, new ways of connecting with students and each other in a time when physically coming together in groups has not been a possibility. Our teachers have invested in their time, their blood, sweat, tears, and their own financial means to set up distance learning studios in their homes to make sure they have access to the best technology possible to carry out distance learning. Having been an educator in the Malden Public Schools since the age of 22, I always knew that the members of the Malden Education Association could rise to any occasion. But seeing educators rise together during a global public health crisis has blown even my own expectations away. So from me to all of my fellow union educators in Malden, thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing everything in your power to not just reach, teach, and inspire our next generation of leaders. Thank you for volunteering in Malden and in communities where you live to get meals and other resources to people. We know as a labor union that we rise by lifting others. I would also be remiss if I did not take a chance while I have a moment now to thank Maria Louise, Adam Weldai, Jen Spadafora, and others for their help communicating with me and with people on the district side to ensure that protocols and safety measures in the memorandum of agreement between the MEA and the Malden School Committee were being put in place and items that needed to be taken care of were taken care of. It takes collective efforts to make sure that our schools are as safe as they can be. Lastly, I wanted to thank everyone who reached out to me and to members of the MEA at Linden last week as we began the process of grieving after losing a friend, colleague, and fellow union member, Pam Wickwire. Pam was an integral part of our school community at Linden. The grieving process is one that isn't quick and looks very different for everyone. So thank you so much for all of the kind words of support because they were very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
You, Ms. Gesualdo. Our next participant is Patrick Fitzgerald. And let me find you, Patrick. Fingers crossed.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Did it work?
It did. Thank
All
you.
right. Great.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Fitzgerald. I live at 45 Westmore Road here in Malden. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard. Thank you all to the frontline teachers, service providers, paraprofessionals, and staff, as well as the building administration for doing an incredible job managing the start of remote learning, navigating the instability and ever-changing landscape, all while rising to the challenge and stepping up for the children and families. As a parent of two special education students in 2nd and 3rd grade at the Linden STEAM Academy, I implore the district to prioritize the special education audit that was approved and promised in the spring at the request of school committee member Michelle Luong. While we unfortunately had to wait for yet another transition in administration with the addition of Assistant Superintendent McDonald, now is the perfect opportunity to begin such an audit to provide Ms. McDonald with the landscape of the special education population in the district. Whatever is needed to prioritize this endeavor must be done in open communication with special education families as requested. I further implore the school committee to identify and publicize the objective public health data it will rely upon to make decisions to transition to the various stages of reopening. We as families need to know this criteria so that we may hold those in the position to make these decisions accountable. With the public health data must be respected and considered, we need to be reminded that each and every day that passes without in-person learning further traumatizes and negatively impacts the education, growth, and development of all students, and particularly special education and high-needs students. We must do what we can to achieve in-person learning for all high-needs students, for which there are many in this district. For many high-needs students, remote learning is not the free and appropriate public education to which they are entitled. I finally implore the school committee, district administration, and the Malden Education Association to continue to meet at the table to negotiate and decide what each stage of transition to reopening will involve for the union members. We cannot afford any additional delay to accommodate collective bargaining when the time comes to transition. Our children, especially our high needs children, deserve to have our elected leaders and district administration do whatever it can to prevent unnecessary delay of in-person learning once it is deemed safe to do so. Again, I want to thank all the frontline teachers, staff, and thank you all for the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fitzgerald.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. And last chance, anybody to raise hand or type your name and address into the chat. Oh, we've got one more. And Laura Gould. Laura, I'm going to promote you to, oh, you already did it. All right, how do I get, now where do I find you?
We just need her address, Adam.
40 Main
Yep,
Street,
put it in.
Malden.
Yep.
Thanks, Laura.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Just to clarify, I came in a couple of minutes late. We're talking about remote learning returning.
Nope, we are in the middle of the public comment session of the meeting, so it's the general public comment at the beginning of the meeting.
Cool. So if we're talking about kind of concerns regarding returning to in-person learning, that comes later.
You can talk about whatever you want. Only just try to keep your comments to a couple of minutes.
I can completely do that. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
My name is Laura Gould. I am a teacher at Malden High School. I'm a special education and math teacher, and work with students who have a wide variety of disabilities. I've been really, really impressed and surprised in a lot of good ways, actually, about how successful distance learning has been, especially for our high schoolers. And I've seen more like student attendance and student engagement through distance learning that I had in a lot of our in-person learning sessions, which is really, really cool. And I've also noticed, because this year I'm teaching some juniors who I've had in previous years, there are students who I'm working with now who are more successful doing distance learning who had been when we were working in person. There are a lot of students, granted, not everyone, but for whom distance learning is actually more beneficial, more appropriate, less traumatizing, less anxiety inducing than in-person instruction. And I recognize that's not necessarily the same for all students, but I think it's also does our students a disservice to assume that for every student, in-person instruction is the best opportunity. I think also the public health data in Malden, considering that our cases are rising, that across the state of Massachusetts, we have a spike in cases right now, and that we are within 10 miles of 7 communities that are considered red by the state of Massachusetts, indicates that it's not safe for teachers or most students to be back in the building. I do recognize that some of our highest need students are going back next week, and that vote was voted on. And I actually teach some of those students in some of my classes. And so I want to make sure that things are safest for our substantially separate students who need to be in the building by not bringing everyone else in, so that they have the space, the physical safety, the ventilation, in order to learn effectively in maybe the manner that works best for them, without having to deal with everybody else in the building bringing in, their various germs and et cetera, considering that some of our most high needs students academically are also some of our most medically compromised students as well. And lastly, given our current infrastructure at the high school, I can't speak to the other schools, but I know that our Wi-Fi is not up to the challenge of all of the teachers live streaming from school at once. It's crashed under things that are far less taxing than that. And there are some facilities questions that have not been resolved yet. I, for one, as a special ed teacher, currently would have to share a room with another adult. I don't feel particularly comfortable with that, especially as somebody who works in the part of the building that has the least robust HVAC system. And I think given the way that our public health criteria are, and that there are still steps that need to be taken in order to make things be safe for everybody to return back, I would ask that we stay in distance learning for the majority of our students until our public health data indicates that it's safe to go back, and I don't think right now it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gould.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, seeing no others, I think we can consider public comment closed.
Thank you, Mr. Weldai. And to our clerk, we did not receive any calls, and we received one email, correct?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to read that into the record, or Mr. Weldai, what do we typically do on that front?
This might be the first time we've received public comment via email.
Yeah, why don't we do this, Madam Clerk? Let's make sure that's distributed to all the members, which I think it has been already. And then going forward, let's make sure those are read in, to the record.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Sure.
All right, very good. So we'll close public comment. Once again, thank you, Mr. Weldai, for your help with administering that. We'll now move to our superintendent for his report. Superintendent Oteri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. If I could, I would like to ask that the school committee and our attendees observe a moment of silence out of respect and honor for the very sudden and tragic loss of a longtime educator here in Malden, Pam Wickwire, who suddenly passed away last Saturday. I think Ms. Gesualdo talked about that in her public comment, but if we could honor her with a moment of silence, I would like to start off my report with that.
And Superintendent, we're also going to adjourn in her memory. So that's something that the school committee approached me on. So, all right, everybody, let's take a moment of silence.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to now transition into my report. We have technology update. We have terrific news. Our Chromebooks have arrived, and we have distributed them to all of our pre-K through 12 students. This is an incredible achievement, and thanks to the collaborative effort led by our central office team of Kelly Chase, Natalia Brennan, and Tony Mertz, we were able to obtain Chromebooks directly from Dell. I think at our last meeting, I had told you how on September 10th, we had the rug pulled out from under us with our vendor CDW, with our order of Chromebooks that was in peril, was supposed to arrive by the 16th, and then it was looking like the end of the month, and then they told us sometime in October. So we're proud to say here on October 5th, through a lot of phone calls and working with certain avenues that we had, we were able to obtain the Chromebooks. We had well over 2,500 arrive. We've got them configured, cataloged, scanned, inspected, and then sent out for distribution. Our leadership team came together very quickly and worked in the Malden High School cafeteria, spread out 6 feet apart with PPE, gloves, masks, and got these things out in record time. We're really proud of them. We had a number of assistant principals, folks from within central office were there lending anywhere from an hour to several days. But this was a tremendous and Herculean task of doing this. They had a lot of fun doing this, as we do when we bond together. There's music, pizza, friendly competitions. Dr. Chase is the crowned king of unboxing, although watching Mr. Conifrey, he's got a special skill himself, a little kind of a quiet assassin over there. But we had a lot of fun doing this. I want to thank the team. They just really came together, especially the minute this was done. The assistant principals kind of dropped everything and came over here and got these books out so our students could be fully on the same level playing field. They're great books that we have. These are from Dell, and they're going to be a real game changer for our students as we are, at least at this point, are still in remote learning. For the 2 weeks prior to that, we were providing paper packets for our pre-K to grade 4 students. And that was no easy task. We made sure that the work was broken up by grade level and was consistent, so all students did the same work in all the schools. And I want to thank Kelly Chase, who really worked tirelessly around the clock each weekend. We've all had lost weekends during this pandemic, but I think what Kelly endured and how she took on this task with some help of the directors really is worth noting. She spent the weekends coordinating and digitally collating these packets so that we could get them out to Minuteman Press so that they could print them. They were a great partner. We've worked with them for a number of years. We just don't have the capacity in our schools to do that high of a volume, double-sided and collated. So we worked with them. So we got 2 weekends worth of packets out, or 2 weeks worth of packets. And today we began our complete distribution of our Chromebooks. We do have some other additional Chromebooks that will be used to replace. And as we have new enrollment coming in, we will continue to provide that. So hats off, tremendous job. We all worked collaboratively. It was a great team effort. And I want to thank those folks who stepped up. There was just, it was very inspiring. Enrollment, we've had a decrease in enrollment in the Malden Public Schools of a little over 400 students since last October. Many families have moved out of state. We've had a number of families go to Florida, Texas, and New York, and we've had an exit of families going to nearby and other communities within Massachusetts. It's a concerning trend. I know in talking with others nearby superintendents, they've also seen a decrease in enrollment. We know some of it can be attributed to an under-enrollment in the kindergarten grade. Right now, we have, as of Friday, I believe we have 380 kindergarten enrollees for this year. That's down significantly. It's down a little over 100, I believe, just under 100 rather, from last year at this time. We are seeing this as a statewide trend. We've brought this up to the commissioner through urban superintendents because we've all seen it, and we know that much of the under-enrollment in kindergarten across the Commonwealth is due directly to the pandemic. We have some incomplete registrations at the Parent Information Center that will be coming forward shortly, we hope. And sometimes parents have decided not to enroll here as they not necessarily are living here. We have about 52 for the kindergarten and 2 for the ELC. Parents and guardians have been contacted in the form of the missing documentation and support them in completing this registration. The commissioner, as I said, is aware of the under-enrollment in the kindergarten level in particular, and also within urban districts. We're working with with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on this because we are concerned about the financial impact. We will be analyzing that here in Malden as well with our finance team as well as our leadership team. As a result of the enrollment numbers, we believe we also need to examine our policy on school assignment and English learner distribution, as that's a bit off kilter from what we've had in the past. The decrease in enrollment is not equal across all schools, and we've had some disparity in enrollment numbers. So I would like to recommend that this matter be examined by the Equity and Opportunity, as well as the Ad-Hoc Enrollment on Subcommittee and Policies and Procedures, that we examine this thoroughly, in particular once the October 1st state report comes back, which will be the standard. So I would look to sometime in November to bring this over to those respective subcommittees with the committee's approval. Special education update. The special education department, after meeting with Ms. Luong and the mayor, have begun an internal audit. The special education department has begun calling families to review their contact information as well as their experience with remote learning and what services were delivered in the spring. We're also working with families to determine what additional services they need to address regression experienced in the spring. The special education department worked hard last spring to provide services remotely during the governor's stay-at-home orders. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education originally told districts to only provide resources to families and then changed that guidance to say that students should continue to receive services. They also made it clear that services may look differently than they did when it was in person. This may have meant that a child received services over Google Meets, was sent a video to watch, was provided asynchronous learning lessons to cover their grid services. The duration and frequency may have also changed during remote learning. Per the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's guidance, each child was provided a remote learning plan that specified how services would be delivered. Parents were notified but did not have to agree with the remote plan. Remote learning was not ideal for some of our families. Having to create remote learning plans and deliver remote services within weeks was difficult for all districts, including Malden. Our educators worked hard in the spring to adapt services to a remote format on very short notice and without extensive resources. Even through the best efforts of our special educators, some families received more robust services than others. This was due to many factors, including the level of tech savvy of the teacher or the provider, the level of need of the student across access to devices, and many unforeseen issues that arose. In order to ensure that our special needs students were serviced adequately this spring, we are reaching out to families to ask them about their experience in the spring. We're checking to see if they received services outlined in their individual remote plans. This was and continues to be a unique and challenging time for our families, but especially those with special needs. Ms. McDonald, our new Director of Special Education, will have an update for the school committee at the November 9th meeting. We also, on October 13th, will have our highest need students return to school for in-person learning. This return is optional for the families. As of now, we have 198 students returning to our 7 buildings. We have 80 students who have opted for remote learning. In order to accommodate families' desires to be in person or remote and abide by the MOA, we're creating remote-only classrooms. This will mean that some class rosters will change. We are assigning teachers to remote classrooms based on students' needs. The new assigns will be done by noon tomorrow. We anticipate this will affect about 20% of our high-needs students and mostly the students that have elected for remote learning. A letter to families went out today which include information on safety protocols and the need to reassign a small number of students to create remote cohorts per the memorandum of agreement. Excuse me. We will inform parents by Tuesday at 4 p.m. if their child needs to be reassigned. The Early Learning Center will be less impacted by the creation of remote classrooms and will be informing their students of any changes on Monday. That's today. We look forward to having our high needs students back here in person on Tuesday, October 13th. We also have an update from, as I reported, the last school committee meeting, we contracted with WB Engineering. They were one of the state contractors that was doing HVAC analysis and certification. The report from them was received by Public Facilities. Each building was analyzed from the schematic design, the engineering load, and then tested in person. Our air movement and filtration system is exceptional and will more than handle the capacity of the return to school for students and staff. We use the highest filtration system of MERV 13 and our air movement is excellent. Our Board of Health Director, Chris Webb, reviewed this and is very pleased with the results. Breakfast and lunch update. This is a reminder to all families that free breakfast and lunch is available at all the K-8 schools and Malden High School every day from 10:30 to 1 p.m. This is for any school-age student in Malden. You can go to the nearest school to where you live. It does not have to be the school that you attend. We will also, we provide meals for the weekend on Fridays, and we are now serving hot meals and hope our families take advantage of this as it is a great opportunity. With the return of in-person learning for some students, we will also be serving more meals. Those will be distributed in those schools. Also, later this month, we will begin to include reheatable dinners for families. I'll have more information as that comes out. We're waiting some confirmation on that. But again, that will be something that we will put out there for our families. And then just now in closing, I just wanted to thank again everybody for their hard work of getting those devices in the hands of our students. We hope that this will help the progression with remote learning and help it go more smoothly now that we're not using packets. We have all of our students with a device in their hand, and we're very excited about that. The school administrators and teachers are working hard to ensure that all students are engaged during remote learning. There's been lots of outreach to students and family, and that's going to be done on a continuous basis. We also look forward to working with students, families, and staff as we aim to make a success of this year despite the obstacles. And we want to again thank everybody for their continued support during this.
Very good. Thank you, Superintendent. Now let's open it up to questions from the members. Any questions? Let's start with Ms. Luong.
Thank you so much, Chairman. So, Mr. O'Terry, first, I just want to say I'm really happy that the audit has begun. This is really exciting. Maybe we could put on our website on if a parent or if a family has not been called, who do they contact to make sure that they're made aware. So maybe we could get that information out to the district as well. That's number one. Number two, a question: how many schools for the 198 kids in person? What is that going to be broken out by all of our available buildings, or are we housing them in mostly one building? How is that going to be done?
As I reported at the last meeting, that they will be at the school to which they're assigned.
Okay.
Yep, we didn't.
I wasn't sure if that changed at all.
And actually, that was a recommendation from Chris Webb from the beginning. We were looking at possibly consolidating for a space reason, and Chris really intervened on a public health aspect of that. It would be better if they were in their assigned classes. It would make contact tracing and separation, allowing more space. So we stuck with that, and we also feel that would be fewer transitions for our students as well.
Okay, and then just one more question on the audit. We can just be sure that the families that do need translation services during these interviews, these phone interviews, will also happen as well at the same time, as it would with any other IEP meeting, right? Correct?
Correct.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Luong. Superintendent, at this point, do you want to introduce our Assistant Superintendent?
Yeah, I believe she is here as a panelist.
Yep.
I don't know if she has a camera available, but Pam McDonald is here. She's made an incredibly, she's hit the learning curve quickly. She's been a real plus. I can't speak enough to her level of organization and how she has attacked problems. She has a real knack for breaking them down and putting them out visually so that I think everybody can follow it. We're really happy with her. She comes to us, as I had said, with an incredible recommendation from some very highly respected people in the field. We're thrilled to have Pam on our team. I think she's fit in very nicely in terms of her acumen, her level of oversight and vision. So welcome, Pam McDonald. I don't know if Pam wants to unmute and say hi or.
Hi, how are you?
Good, welcome aboard. And people want to get a hold of you, Ms. McDonald. What's the best way?
I'd say email. And I believe today we changed the, my new admin assistant changed the website. So it should have all my information. I apologize to families. That wasn't my first priority. We're working so hard to get our kids in here next Tuesday that we're really focused on that. So some of the communications to families and those types of things that you would usually do if you start on July 1 in a regular year, we just haven't quite got to yet because we're really focused on making sure every piece is in place so that they come back and they're safe and happy and secure on the
So,
13th.
Donald, if someone was in, they go to maldenps.org and then where to find your information? To the administration, is that it?
Yeah, I believe it's on there, and if not, it's pmacdonaldmac@maldenps.org.
Okay, great. Let me, before I go to other members, just thank Ms. Luong. Anybody that thinks she took the summer off only has to see the number of Zoom calls she had with me and Superintendent Oteri on making sure this happened. So I do want to publicly thank her for her diligence in getting us this far. So next meeting, November 9th, that's when we'll hear back as to what Ms. McDonald and others found, and then we'll go from there. So let's now jump to Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Superintendent. A quick comment before my question, which is, I think with the technology piece, I don't think any of us expected it to happen as quickly as it happened. I think you all really, what you managed to pull together was phenomenal. And I think for folks at home, they didn't stop on Friday and start on Monday. I mean, folks were working 24/7 to find computers, which in the middle of this, it's like finding PPE city to city was like kind of crazy. So, between John and Tony and Kelly and Natalia, it's just amazing. And I guess, and real big props, I think, to Vance and Lindsay at Minuteman Press too, for banging that stuff out as quickly as humanly possible.
Yes.
I mean, we took crisis learning to a new definition from the spring to now. So it's the one thing we can do, right, is we roll with it, and you guys should really be applauded for that work. To the enrollment piece, Superintendent Oteri will definitely take up the policy and the EL distribution piece and equity. I think we should probably get equity together sometime in the next, between now and the November meeting. I think that, like many things, has sort of fallen by the wayside, and everything's been about pandemic and hybrid and transitioning. And so I think we need to sort of refocus to make sure the little things don't fall through the cracks. So we'll definitely work with you to get something on the books between now and the November meeting. The only question I had was, will the HVAC report that's been completed and distributed to public facilities, will that be also posted on the website for the public, or is that something the public can see or request to see?
I don't know if there's any qualifier with that, but I mean, certainly there's nothing to hide in. I think it highlights that our system is in very good shape.
I think Eric, we got to give Eric Rubin, he did Eric is the director of public facilities, and I think by chance, I think he said this once or twice before, they were doing upgrades on things by chance before the pandemic hit, that then became super relevant. But I think if, maybe that's something that we can explore, getting that, the independent testing results up.
And I also, you raised a good point, Mr. Weld. I do want to also comment on this because I think the city undertook a great endeavor in the partnership with Honeywell. And one of the facets that I think that we have at our disposal is that, this system is now highly computerized and monitored. So if there is a lag or if there's not enough airflow, we're going to be signaled sooner than later, rather than relying on people saying the air isn't moving. So it ties in nicely. And, many of these upgrades were done before COVID was even thought of, because we were looking at it in terms of being green and environmentally responsible, which we know is going to save us money and energy. So some of this was already in place. We've also spent, a lot of money over the last several years replacing compressors, chillers, and boilers. So the system is really in great shape. I think when I talk with other superintendents, they are rather envious that 5 of our K-8s are really less than 22 years old. The high schools had a major overhaul in their HVAC system, and the ELC has as well. So, we're in really, really good shape. We're very happy about that, and we know it's going to make our buildings much safer.
I was reading a report recently from some neighboring districts around us. I didn't know anything about air filtration and HVAC systems, I think, before this whole thing started. And the fact that we were able to upgrade ours to the MERV 13s prior to all this starting. And I think there are districts around us that the buildings, A, they can't get the filters, and B, the buildings are not outfitted to have like the MERV 13. So I've seen people say, well, they only get the MERV 8. And it's like, all right, well, at least we got in there and we hopefully made some proactive changes, before this all started.
Because in order to have the MERV 13 filters, you need to have the air filtration power that will work through that. So ours have always had that. I mean, if you've had a system that's like 30 or 40 years old, you're out of luck. You can't just throw the higher end filter on that. It's just not going to work. It's not engineered for it. So what WB did, they spent a week looking at all of the blueprints and the schematics before they even stepped foot in any of our buildings. And then they went building to building using their monitors. I mean, it wasn't cheap, but it was a way to ensure the safety of our students and staff. And I think that it's something that we can be quite proud of as a district. And certainly, one that, our buildings are in very good shape in general, from, top to bottom, inside and out. So we're really happy about that.
And Mr. Chair, my last note, and Mr. Oswaldo touched upon this in public comment, was actually really just to thank both you and your Chief of Staff, Maria Louise, because I think, we are really happy and very fortunate that we're going to be able to offer in-person services to our highest needs learners starting next week. And I think it could not be undersold to the community that would not be happening had it not been for the efforts from your office to sort of help us as a school district make sure we've ticked off all of the things that we needed to do on that facilities worksheet. Ms. McDonald jumped right in. Timing could not have been better for us, worse for her to start at a chaotic time. But really, the fact that we were able to pull that all together so quickly, the people who are going to benefit the most are our highest needs learners, and that's all that matters. So thank you for that.
Very good, Mr. Weldai. Anybody else have any questions of our superintendent? Ms. Long, for a second time. Ms. Long,
That's okay, John.
Can you hold that? I want to go to Ms. Spadafora, and then I'll swing
Yeah,
down. Ms.
sure.
Spadafora.
Thank you. Sorry, Michelle.
No, that's okay.
Just a few questions. So Superintendent, when you touched upon the reassigning of high need students, we were talking about, and this kind of touches upon what Ms. Long was talking. So high need students will be in the schools that they're assigned to, but when we talk about reassigning, we're talking about the cohorts?
No.
You brought up I just want to get some clarification on this.
No, and I think Pam, because you can probably say it more succinctly than I, this has to do with the teacher that they would have, because per the MOA, we can't do both remote
and
in person.
Yep.
So
Ms. McDonald?
we've had to just shuffle a few of the classrooms because you can't have both. And so we've had to assign some students to teachers who are going to have the remote cohort and some teachers that are going to be in person. And for the most part, we were able to do it without changing too many students, but there will be a few students that unfortunately will see a change next week in their teacher, but not that many. So it was just something we had to do to comply. Unfortunately, we started our kids back to school on the 16th, but we didn't know who was going to pick which one, remote and or in person. And in some cases, although we did ask them, they had switched their request. So with so much movement, it was actually quite a bit of movement from the original conversation of who was coming back to now. Originally, I think only 55% of our students were going to come back in person, and now we're looking at almost 72. So we had to do a little bit of switching to make that work.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Secondly, and this goes back to technology. So we had opened up a technology help desk for parents to be able to call into if they're having difficulty with Chromebooks. Are we collecting data off of those phone calls to find out what a majority of our phone calls are coming in for? That way we can run an analysis on our biggest issues that we're working with and who's working through that. I'm assuming Natalia probably, because she's our
actually, I believe, I know in the first few days of it, we Tony Mertz, we're getting the direct reports from the vendor GDS. I know we had a number of issues that were related specifically to the login. Those got resolved. There was a data migration issue that once it happened, it was a quick flip of a switch, and we got them resolved quickly. But we will be watching these because some of it could be related to the hardware itself, the device. But we will be tracking this. That's one of the benefits that this help desk does provide. That they do track the type of call, how long it takes to resolve, that type of thing.
Okay. And then just lastly, when we were discussing meals, and you were talking about weekend meals. So just for clarification, those can be picked up on Fridays or Saturday and Sunday, and that is breakfast and lunch as well?
Correct.
So essentially 4 meals, or in total, if you were going to go on Friday, so that's 6 meals can be picked up for the 3-day time period.
That's correct.
Friday, Saturday.
And hopefully we're going to be able to distribute dinners in the next couple of weeks. I'll get back to you once we have that confirmed, but we're looking at that as well.
Okay, so essentially Friday's the only day. I'm just thinking in my head, if somebody, was out of pocket on Friday and they can't make it, but that weekend meal is imperative to these children eating. I don't know if we can look into alternatives. I mean, I don't know how early we can provide stuff, but just, a thought.
I can look into that, if that could be like a Thursday, Friday option potentially. Let me look into that.
I appreciate that.
If we can accommodate that, we will. I think, we've got a commitment to really eradicating food insecurity.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spadafora. Ms. Wong.
Yes, I just have some clarification. So I do have a bit of a concern of the bandwidth we have as we're starting to bring students in and teachers into the different buildings. And Laura Gould brought up a point that she felt that the high school, on a good day, they had some issues with their Wi-Fi and some issues with that. So what is your plan for monitoring as we're slowly bringing populations back into our school system? How are we monitoring how our building, each individual building, is handling the Wi-Fi bandwidth? And what upgrades do you think we could be making going forward that we can be able to make sure? Because once we start hybrid, we don't want to have to then go back to remote because we don't have the correct bandwidth already kind of in place. So that's my question.
So let me just tell you that over the last year or so, we've, through our E-rate grants, have put in, I think, about $600,000 worth of hardware infrastructure, servers, routers. We experienced very little problems when we've had lots of people on, such as MCAS testing, WEDER, or access testing that require a high volume of people on. What we're seeing, and I've talked with our tech people and with Anthony Rodriguez from the city, some of the issues that people experience, like what you're experiencing at home, isn't necessarily what's going on in your house. It's what's going on with the vendor, whether it's Comcast or Verizon or whomever that could be. We have been monitoring this. We also have a core booster, I think, don't quote me on what it is, that should be arriving this week. If it hasn't already, that will be added into this. We will continue to monitor. There's some issues. Last week was a little wonky with some of the power outages that went on. Linden is notorious. There's a substation that services Linden, Revere, and a section of Saugus that goes out, and when it goes out, it trips one of the switches in the Linden for Wi-Fi. So sometimes that has to be manually reset, but we can do that relatively quickly. But some of the issues that we've had, from what we're hearing, we're seeing fine traffic on our end, but it's the signal that's coming in from Comcast. Some of the issue is old infrastructure within the city itself, or where it's coming from, that it goes as well as it can. at times, but we will continue to monitor this. And I think we have a very good tech team, and Anthony Rodriguez, the city's IT director, has been integral in monitoring all of this as well. So we'll continue to do that.
Okay, just one more question on that. So with the high school having even currently periodic Wi-Fi outages, and I think Laura had mentioned in her Q&A here that one happened as of even last week. And I know, sometimes reception's been a bit spotty. So I'm just curious, will you share with us your plan? Like, what is Anthony Rodriguez's plan to handle those type of issues as we go forward? Like, I know we're going to have them, but how do we have them less? And how do we have them so everybody feels supported? Because as we bring more people into the high school, it's not gonna get better. It's going to get worse if we're not handling that infrastructure now, the issues that we have. So I guess I didn't have a clear enough answer from you. That's all. So we have a teacher on here saying that last week there were outages. You're saying that it's not happening, or it's Comcast's issue. So how do we fix that? That's my concern. That's all.
Well, we continue to monitor it, and as we identify what the issue is, we address that. If
Okay.
it's an issue with the vendor or the signal itself, we work with them to try to resolve that. But we will continue to monitor this. I think that they've got a substantial amount of equipment that does monitor the traffic and outages in the schools. I mean, we have minimal.
Mhm.
I think last week was a bit of an anomaly because there was storm work. Some of the times when something gets, they're working on things that causes some ancillary problems down the road.
Okay.
But there was not, large scale Wi-Fi outages. I think, frankly, the one that's been the biggest recipient of it has been me, and that's specific to my office and the way in which my device was configured to go on to a certain way, and it took them a long time to finally rectify that. Particularly when it came to Zoom calls in specific, not as much Google, but Zoom. There was a problem that seems to have been something that was installed during an update that didn't quite take, but it took them a while to get that. But that was specific to my device and my specific location, which only my device was on. So it was more baffling.
Well, I didn't want to assume that, but you are located at the high school building, so I was a little concerned by that. So I'm glad that they fixed that for you. So I'm glad that got worked out. But that was just my concern. I just want to make sure.
They're going to come back tomorrow and hopefully run some more tests on it. But I was on a Zoom call on Friday for about 2 hours with urban superintendents, and I didn't have any issues. So that seemed to work well.
Awesome.
Take it from there. But the rest of the high school seems to be working quite well.
Great. Thank you for that. That's all I have.
Long. Thank you. Anybody else? If I might, just from the chair, I want to join Mr. Weldai too, and also thanking the school committee and the district-wide PTO, as well as the city council, who all came together on that Honeywell initiative. Superintendent's right. We had done that, I think it was a year or two ago, not realizing, how handy it would come in, and it really has been since we did that. So kudos to everybody on this call, and especially to the district-wide PTO. Superintendent, under enrollment, I just want to ask you a little bit more on the changeover. So the families that have moved out, I know sometimes I thought we were doing spot exit interviews, why people were leaving the system. Is it because they were joining up with other family members? Was it jobs? Was it cost of living?
I think we've heard a variety of reasons. I think, particularly housing has been a factor, but you also have to remember the PIC has technically been closed, so we haven't had that face-to-face interaction like we have in the past.
Right.
It's made it a little more difficult, and this is what the families self-report as to where they're going.
Yeah.
But we've heard. I know I've heard from a number of people. It's been housing. It's been rent. It's been opportunities that they're moving someplace different. I know in June we had a spate of a dozen or so families that were moving out of state for different jobs. In particular, I think we lost, it was kind of ironic, we lost 4 families to Texas, 4 families to Florida, and a couple to New Jersey or New York for jobs that they took.
Okay. Staying with enrollment, second paragraph where you talk about the 153 incomplete registrations, is that normal on a year-by-year basis, or is that extraordinary?
It's a little higher this year, and I know part of the issue was, doing much of this remotely has been a problem. Also, I know that Ms. Federico has noted that the policy that the school committee adopted last year has made it a little more challenging for families. I think that we did that so that we were making sure that the people that were enrolling were actually Malden residents. So that's been something that's been a little bit different for folks than in the past. I think the other problem we've had is the medical issue. The state has not waived the medical requirements, and it's been difficult for families to obtain physicals and medical care. Although our Board of Health does do immunizations by appointment, we referred them there, but those have been other factors that have led to that as well.
That's right.
So Superintendent, when it comes to the kindergarten classes, if you add in the 52 kindergartners who are still working on their paperwork, plus the 380 that did register, that's about 432. So would that be cause for concern from last year's, which was 478? Would that be normal if all 52 had their paperwork in order?
It's still down from last year. That would put us at like 430, so it would still be down.
Yeah, I didn't know if that's a normal swing.
That's a bit of a dip, unless there's been a baby boom, if you will, in a particular year, which sometimes happens. But that would be off, but not a real major draw like it would be now.
Let's say, Superintendent, all these numbers remain true. You said you have been speaking with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. There is some talk about holding districts somewhat harmless from all these changes.
There's been some talk that they would not look at this year as a one-year snapshot. That they would look at potentially looking at it over a 2 or 3 or longer year period, because there are other districts that are in similar situation to us where they've had a significant drop without any warning. So I know the commissioner has stated publicly at our superintendent meetings that he is aware of this and is looking at it. He has not said, I will hold you harmless, but he has said that we will work with the legislature because they would be the funding source, that we wouldn't, it's trying to minimize the impact financially as best we can, and I certainly would be appreciative of any of those efforts.
Okay, now to the school committee, please place this on your agenda. So when you run into our state delegation, I think it's worth starting to talk to them about this, because if they do not hold us harmless, that, as you can imagine, is going to be a drop in state aid. So, Mr. Weldai, do you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I'm honestly just curious because I think that our commissioner does a tremendous job of passing the buck in terms of leadership. So I don't think this is a legislature issue. I think he can, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he can make that decision on his own, but it sounds like he doesn't want to.
Well, not necessarily. He's indicated he's willing to work with us, but let's say there's a change of opinion, or maybe he decides not to, or the governor decides not to. I think it's worth making sure that the legislative branch is just, made aware that this is an issue for Malden and other cities and towns.
In terms of not using the October 1 data for this year.
Correct.
I get how that sort of connects to the funding piece. So should we be pushing our legislators to push him to make that decision?
No, not at this point, because it's at least, Superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong. Hold on a second. You know what time it is.
Yep. Energy efficiency time.
I think he did that because the Patriots game is going to start, but that's just my conspiracy theory.
Mr. Weldai, I think the commissioner has indicated a willingness to work with us. I think more it's just us being aware and in passing with the legislative delegation, making them aware that this potentially could be an issue. It's not an issue right now, but it's something they should
It will be
be
an issue.
aware of.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr.
Yeah,
Iovino?
but it's not a matter of holding us harmless. As I understand it, they're going to look at it's going to be a weighted average of the last 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 years. But the issue is all going to come down to dollars. It's all going to come down to money.
Yep.
I was talking to a local politician, one of our local political leaders, and he said that the state is down $8.6 billion from loss of meal tax, liquor tax, lottery, casinos. It's all a matter of money. Yeah, we certainly don't want to lose all of that money from a loss of enrollment, but some of that enrollment will tick up. We've already picked up 56 students from the start of the year. I think with the 153, if you look at our number, which is 6183 right now, if those 153 applications are all completed, we're at 6336, which is, down from where we were, and it's a lot down, but it's not a huge number. It can be made up. We could end up the year maybe 100 or so down.
So
A little
everybody,
bit more than 100
just
over the year.
leave this call tonight, just being aware of that, okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Let me see, my last question, Superintendent, under special education update, 3rd paragraph, 2nd sentence. Parents were notified but did not have to agree with the remote plan. How many did not?
I don't think we've contacted all the special ed parents at this point. We just
So we'll
began.
find that out November 9th.
I think that will be one of the items that Ms. McDonald will be reporting on.
Ms. McDonald, is that true?
So in the spring, you had all of your teachers, my understanding is all of your teachers, they worked really hard this spring. They called the parents and said, look, how are we going to deliver services considering we're not in person? They came up with a plan and that was sent home. That was Desi's wording, that you had to provide them with notice, you had to have a conversation, you had to send them. It's a little different, the remote plan, than an IEP where they have to sign and agree. But my understanding is most remote plans were discussed with families in Malden before they were sent home. So I believe most families had input into that remote plan.
Okay. So there weren't any that I mean, you just started, but there weren't any that you know of that did not agree with the remote plan in the spring?
I mean, I'm sure in every district there are some, but we'll find that out as we call.
Yeah, can you update us on at the November meeting about that, if you can? All right, Mr. Long, do you want to add to that? Because we're going to move on to subcommittee reports right after you.
Perfect. Yes, sorry. If we could be specific on what we're considering the conversation that happened. So we may be considering what a remote plan looks like. It could have been just simply, look, we're not going to be able to deliver services. That's it. So I think we need to just delve in. When you're interviewing, I think you need to be a little clear, because I did receive calls from parents saying that, they had no conversations. So, you know what I'm saying? So I just think it needs to be what's considered an actual agreement of an enrollment plan. I don't believe they went over individual students' plans and saying, this is how we're going to do your student's plan. I think it was more of a 50,000 foot view conversation versus an individual one. So I just want to make sure that's clarified.
And again, I wasn't here, but we'll look into that.
Absolutely.
I have a script, so we're going to ask certain questions so we get the information that I hope that you guys all want.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Luong. And now we're going to move on to subcommittee reports. Let's hear from Mr. Iovino. I think we already have about where we are with space and enrollment. Do we need to say further, Mr. Iovino?
Well, no, I just think that some things bear repetition. I mean, it's very difficult for the Parent Information Center to operate. It's different, way different than last year. They have to do by appointments, and you can only have X number of people in the office at a time. So the incomplete applications, usually it's as the superintendent said, immunization. Sometimes it's because the landlords who are under penalty of law, they won't verify that a family lives there just on word of mouth. So that's also a possibility. Enrollment is down everywhere. A lot of different communities. A lot of different communities are experiencing the same thing. We lost children. I mean, as I was looking over it, I mean, it blew me away. We've lost kids to Chelsea. We've lost 8 kids to Chelsea, 42 to Everett. We've lost 10 to Lynn. We've lost 12 to Revere, 14 to Saugus, 48 to Wakefield. I mean, 5 of those communities are hotspots. I don't get it. And then, of course, we have 12 parents who moved to Winchester, and I refuse to believe that the rents in Winchester are cheaper than they are in Malden.
Well, that's why, Mr. Iovino, I'd like our superintendent, I'm not sure how, but I would be curious if you can somehow just find out, maybe spot
Yeah,
check.
we need to sit down with, I'm going to sit down with Kenny Tran as soon as possible.
Right.
And
Well,
I will.
I think at the end of motions and resolutions, right, Mr. Weldai, we're going to have your committee, I believe, look at this, right, in conjunction with Mr. Iovino's. So we'll make that motion at the end. But let's stay with Mr. Iovino because under motions and resolutions, he has the first 3. The first one is a donation from KISS 108 in the Mass
Yes.
Association of School Superintendents. Mr. Iovino.
Exactly. Yeah, KISS 108 has been involved since the summer with the Mass Association of School Committees, and what they did was Chromebooks for kids. That was the moniker for their fundraising effort, and they want to donate to the city of Malden $7,298, I believe. So it's just short of $7,300, and I would move acceptance of that donation.
Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. McCarthy. Discussion. So what we're going to do on behalf of the school committee, the superintendent and I will write to KISS 108 to thank them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Donation. So no questions. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Honorary Malden High School Diploma for Edward Graffam.
Yes, Edward Graffam, and also for John Joseph O'Neill.
Yep.
We'll take Mr. O'Neill first. John Joseph O'Neill was a World War II veteran. He was a tail gunner on a B-17 that did 27 missions over Germany during daylight bombing runs. He has quite a military record. This has been an established program started by former school committeeman Bill Minnie and also Mrs. Ann Madigan, who was the former superintendent of Forestdale Cemetery. She was a wonderful woman, very determined. And they had this program dating back more than 20 years of granting high school diplomas to those young men and women who left Malden High School to serve in the military during wartime. So I would recommend the Malden High School diploma being awarded to Mr. John Joseph O'Neill. Do you want to take them separately, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, they deserve that.
Absolutely. So I recommend Malden High School diploma be awarded to Mr. John Joseph O'Neill.
All right, there's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McCarthy. So any questions on this? Everybody understand? This is something we have done before. Well deserved. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
On the issue of Edward Graffam.
1 second, Mr. Iovino.
Oh,
The
sorry.
ayes have it. It carries unanimously. Back to Mr. Iovino.
Okay, Edward Graffam also is a Malden High School, was a Malden High School senior. He left high school to join the United States Army. I believe he was in the infantry during the Korean War. He later, when he returned, he got his GED and he became a Malden police officer for, I think, 35 years. So he is into public service as well as military service. I recommend, again, that the application being awarded, Malden High School diploma be awarded to Mr. Edward Graffam.
Second by Mr. Weldai. Any discussion? Chair hears none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Iovino. Now we're going to move to Ms. Spadafora. Update on criteria for school reopening. Well, let's have Ms. Spadafora introduce it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the reason I was bringing this to the school committee is because we've had a lot of discussion between the reentry task force. We've talked about negotiations with the MOA. as well as recently the Joint Labor Management Committee, and I don't feel as though the public has been made aware of the criteria that we need to meet to enter the following phases outside of remote learning. And I know there's a lot that's going to go into that criteria, but I think it's in the best interest of the school committee to be made aware of that, as well as the public, as to whether we're following CDC guidelines and what those may be, DESE guidelines or guidance and what they may be, public health data and what that may be. So my motion is that the superintendent put forth the information that we are following to enter the 6 stages that were outlined in the MOA for us to go forth past the remote learning phase.
All right, Superintendent, is that something you could bring to our next meeting or submit to us ahead of time?
Yeah, sure. I mean, part of it's outlined in the MOA that we follow both local, state, federal guidelines. We look at the relevant infection rates. We look at trends. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education also has released guidance on this as well, that we're really looking at a 3-week window. Just because a community went red does not mean it automatically should cease in-person learning. So much of this sometimes rests within the purview of the local Board of Health. And that we are deferential to Mr. Webb and his area of expertise if he feels that it is unsafe. I mean, he's been I would say, has done an exceptional job in Malden in being very conservative in terms of moving to next stages. I think he has kept health and safety as the primary goal. So we meet with the Joint Labor Management Committee on health and safety. We've had a weekly meeting for the last 3 weeks. There are 5 people on the management side, and there are 5 folks representing the Malden Education Association. And we continue to, monitor and review data as necessary. Our first priority was to get our high need students in, which was voted on last week. I believe it was Thursday, to get these students in on October 13th.
All right, Ms. Spadafora, is that covered?
I think I was just looking for a little bit more data, actually, when I reviewed surrounding school districts. The one thing I did notice was, I know we're putting a lot of faith into our Department of Public Health. What is the criteria that they're using is really what I'm looking for. If we're going to rely upon another area, are we looking to be in a green for 3 weeks? I have numerous notes in front of me, but I think I'm looking for more hard data on, the amount of cases that are in Malden. What do we need to be below on our percentage of positivity rates? I think saying that we have criteria is different than what we're actually looking at. Like, I think we need hard metrics.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to get those, Ms. Spadafora. I mean, one thing I've learned up here in the mayor's office, it is not an exact science. I mean, when we went green over the summer, I thought we were all going to be back in. And then lo and behold, within a week, we were yellow, and then we were almost red. Then we were back down to yellow. So I know one of the things that we look for up here is just some consistency, something not 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but, just something that makes us feel confident and comfortable, that we can bring everybody back in. And we haven't seen that yet.
No, but exactly what you just said, though, is exactly what I think we're looking for, and
Yeah.
that we haven't been given the information on. I know we don't have exacts, and this
Right.
we're never going to have exact
Right.
science and data. But I think having some sort of outlook to say our goal is, and I don't think we've actually established like a goal yet. I haven't heard one as a parent in the district. I haven't heard like what are the safety measures that we're going to be at for us to even remotely think about going into a hybrid model. I just feel like there hasn't been enough information given for, parents or the community to understand, next steps.
Okay, let me jump to your left, Ms. Spadafora. I see Mr. Weldai with his hand up.
I think what Ms. Spadafora just said very eloquently was, I think, what the community is thinking, right? I think she just managed to sort of put into words, I think, what a lot of folks who are at home and are watching this process play out are thinking. And, when I was listening to her question and then your answer, Mr. Chairman, it sort of just dawned on me that it's not even the hard statistical data that I think people are craving. I think it's just the consistent communication. And I know, I think to sort of throw this to our superintendent, I know we've been looking for a communication specialist. I think, at this point, that should be one of our highest priorities, because I think we've been looking for a while. And I think, we could have, I think if we really put our effort into it, we could get someone on board soon. But, I empathize a little bit with that, Jen, because, a lot of times, we're doing a lot of answering of questions based on our knowledge of the MOA. And I think what would be helpful are things that, a communication specialist can put together on Canva, like, a couple graphics of like, these are the things that like are being looked for, a couple of weeks of consistent data. Even if we're able to, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I love reading 28 page documents as much as the next guy, but if we're able to pull out the relevant data and sort of just turn it into a graphic and say, hey, parents, like, this is what the Joint Labor Management Committee is looking to do at their meeting. Like, they're looking for this, and this as a starting point, because it isn't an exact science, you're right. But yeah. I think if we communicate it well enough and get that message out there that, I think there are a lot of people out there that think that we have zero plan for even a hybrid stage. And the hybrid stage is sort of ironed out. It's really the idea of when we get there that's not, because that's sort of up to science and public health. And I think the better we can communicate that to the public, the more, I'm sure that there are hundreds of people out there who are thinking exactly what Jen just said. And
well, let me stop you, Mr. Weldai. Superintendent, what happened to the school committee's idea that we had last month? I think was you and or the principals having Zoom town halls with
They've begun them. I know several of the schools have already had them.
Oh, have they?
Yeah.
Okay. School committee, you all aware of those?
Ferryway, I think, is either they're scheduled this week. Yeah, they should be out there.
Did we get notified of those, Madam Clerk?
I don't think so. I think that they've just gone to the school community. Okay,
because I know typically we get notified of the back to school nights, but I know we're in a pandemic. I don't know if it's too late, Madam Clerk, but I think it'd be good for the school committee just to be made aware of when the principals / assistant principals are meeting with the respective schools. And Superintendent, you've talked about doing your own citywide town hall, no? Or are you leaving?
Yeah, I think once we get our students in, I think we want to see how that's going for a few, a bit, and then we'll set up like a citywide or district-wide town hall sometime the end of October, I'm envisioning.
Okay. Well, why don't we do this in the meantime, based on what Ms. Spadafora and Mr. Weldai said, why don't we pull out the relevant parts of that MOA and condense it into, a graph or some kind of, listing of some of the criteria that will be used in order for us to come back in a hybrid model or a full in. Maybe have that ready for our next meeting. Is that good, Mr. Weldai, Ms. Spadafora?
Well, Ms. Spadafora, thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm looking for. I guess I'm really just looking for, what are the metrics we're using? Are we going by DESE guidance? Are we going by CDC? Are we combination of,
everything? Yeah,
everything. And and we're not just looking at maybe health guidance, but we're looking at what Ms. Long was talking about, bandwidth. Can we support a hybrid model of having teachers in the building, on Chromebooks as well as students. So I think it's a myriad of things, but I just would like to see some sort of, give me a PowerPoint presentation to throw out to the community to say this is what we're acting on, because they don't see everything that we see behind the scenes.
All right, Soup, let's see if we can pull that together.
Sure.
All right. All right, Ms. Spadafora, now we're going to jump to Mr. Weldai. Decision on employee's child attending Malden Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The policy subcommittee met right before this meeting at 5:30. We did receive an applicant from, or an application from Ms. Katie Hannon, who is a teacher, a longtime teacher at the BB, for a hardship application to enroll her son in the Malden Public Schools for kindergarten. It was clarified in the midst of the meeting, and we want to thank Katie publicly for attending. Thank Ms. Hannon. It was clarified in the meeting that she is seeking just 1 year enrollment, so just for kindergarten. It's not something she's planning on having last for K through 12. She's in between homes. It's while she's searching for permanent residence with her family. It'd be great if it was in Malden, but if not, wherever she ends up will be where her son will go to first grade. And I want to give special props to Jen, Rob, and Michelle for also emphasizing that, we didn't want to uproot her son mid-year, even if they find a home in the middle of this year. We want to make sure there's some consistency for him. And so the policy subcommittee voted unanimously with the superintendent's recommendation to allow entrance for the kindergarten year.
All right, very good. There you have it. Any questions on it? Well, let's first get it up properly. So, Mr. Weldai, are you making the motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
By Ms. Spadafora. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Now, Mr. Weldai, is it here we want to pluck out that part from the superintendent's report and send it off to committee, or wait till next month?
I could be wrong. I don't necessarily think we need to motion to send it there.
Okay. So superintendent, why don't we just let that happen organically?
Hold on, I'm seeing, so maybe we want to do it through, yep, okay. So I'm going to pull up the superintendent's report real fast because I just minimized it.
Yeah, first paragraph, I think it was the first section, last paragraph.
Thank you. While I'm pulling that up, and just a reminder to the superintendent, I think that Katie is on this call right now, but just to make sure we notify Ms. Hannon after the meeting. Okay, so I'll make a motion to refer the examination of the policy on school assignments and English learner student distribution to the Equity and Opportunity Committee.
All right, seconded by Ms. Spadafora. Any questions on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed to that? All right, the ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Okay, we're now down to personal privilege. So this is an opportunity for the members to mention anything respective to their particular wards. Then we will entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of collective bargaining with units A, B, and C. Move adjournment in memory of Ken Wickwire. So points of personal privilege. Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Ms. Spadafora, I see your hand raised.
Sorry, I have a dog barking in the background as well.
No worries.
Okay, personal privilege. So a few things. I just want to reiterate that this Friday there is a half day with a 12:30 p.m. dismissal from remote learning, as well as no school on October 12th. The next BB PTO meeting is going to be October 19th. once I have that Zoom or Google Meet information, I will post that on my personal page, as well as a BB School Site Council meeting on October 22nd. The BBPTO is hosting a back to school giveaway right now. If you go to the BBPTO Facebook page and share your child's favorite class subject in the comments, you can win a BB Bulldog t-shirt, which you can then wear on BB Bulldog Fridays. And then lastly, so we were talking about, I think this just came out, principals hosting their meetings, and Dr. Murphy did hold a coffee with the principal hour last Thursday, which was extremely informative, and she will be hosting those on a monthly basis. And again, I will be circulating that Zoom information. I encourage all parents to attend, especially in this time of remote learning, to be able to connect with the principal and ask questions pertinent to what's going on with your students' education. I found it extremely informative as a parent, and understanding the direction that the school's going right now. So again, Dr. Murphy shares all of this information on her principal's page on the BB page. So I will share that as well on my page.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Spadafora. All right, seeing no others, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
Mr. Iovino, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Drummy? Mr. Froyo?
Yes, he said.
Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Iovino?
Yes.
Ms. Luong?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Ms. Spadafora?
Yes.
Mr. Weldai?
Yes.
Mayor Christensen?
Yes. So we will go into executive session by unanimous vote. Superintendent, for the public that are watching, do we expect any votes when we come back out? Or is this more information?
I don't expect votes. I think it's
Okay. So for the people watching, we don't expect any votes coming back from executive session. We will only come back to move adjournment. And again, that will be in the memory of Pam Wickwire. All right, Mr. Weldai, what do you want members to do? Leave this session?
Yeah, so you're gonna go to the bottom right and hit end. I will leave this open. I sent you a link to executive session this morning at 9:45. Use that Zoom link to hop into executive session.
All right, we'll see you in a minute.
See you in there. was just at another meeting with a lot of people that look like you guys.
You certainly have this whole Zoom thing down pat there, Adam.
Yeah, you gotta learn, especially because the kids know more than I do about it. So it's like when you're trying to have I try to hold office hours or go in and out of classes, like they know more about Zoom, and I've learned a lot. Staying at one step ahead of one step behind the teenagers is probably the best thing you can ask for.
Yeah.
7, 8. Okay, we have everybody, I believe. So now we'll entertain a motion to adjourn in memory of Pam Wickwire.
Motion.
Motion by Adam, seconded by John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. School committee is hereby adjourned.
Have a good evening, everybody.
You too.
Chairman.
Good night.